A gute Voch. How's everybody doing? Today's shir is being sponsored. Leilu Nishmas. Imi. Rus Passer Rav Mordechai. There's no other sponsors today. You know why? There's no time. Pasha, no time to print anything. There's no time. There's no time for a tie. There's no time to print out what I needed to print out. We'll have to do with just this. I had a lot of nice charts I want to make. Beseder, we'll do. There's even an email that I wanted to read from Elio Lurie, I think it is. He says that Rabbi Side, there's a great website for Zichru. If you want to remember the learning, I didn't print it out, but there's a Zichru, you could see it on all Daf. Our shir is also on all Daf. All Daf has the Zichru. If you're into this kind of stuff, it takes the Gemara and makes it into stories, into like a picture. And you take that picture and you can remember, it's easier to remember pictures and that sort of thing, and imaginary stuff, and like that you can remember the Daf. So he highly recommends it. Rabbi said we have a beautiful Daf. It's Daf Tzadik today. 90 into Eruvin. It's actually 89. And we are holding by the top of Daf Tzadik. Top line. Boi Rami Bar Chama. Shtei amois begag u shtei amois ba'amud mau. So, yesterday we're discussing, also the pictures are not going to be in order, so you're going to have to bear with me. So we're discussing, you have a rooftop, and you have two residents below. According to Rav, we don't say gud asik. You don't have an imaginary wall that goes up. Why? Because you don't notice where the wall is. When you're walking on the rooftop, it's flat. There's no indication that there's a wall, so you don't say gud asik. And therefore, what we have is two residents below, and each resident asers the other resident to go on his roof. There's no eruv on the roof. It's open to makom aser. It's open to makom aser, so it's aser to go from one side of the roof to the other. And not only that, you are stuck where you are because you're open to makom aser, and you're only allowed 4 amas. 4 amas, that's it. Shmuel, on the other hand, says, we do invoke gud asik. There's a wall, an imaginary wall that goes up. Therefore, each rooftop is an individual rishus. Individual rishus, you can walk on the entire rishus. So asks Rami Bar Chama, okay, you're only allowed to go 4 amas. But how about, could I take the 4 amas and cross over from the rooftop onto some sort of beam that's next to the rooftop? Let's say 4 tefachim away from the rooftop, Taisus explains. So you go from the rooftop to the beam. Is that okay? Now, according to Rav, what is the entire rooftop? Let's think about it. What is it? I can't walk anywhere. So it's not a Rishus HaYachid, because if it was a Rishus HaYachid, I could carry an entire roof. It's not a Rishus HaRabim. You don't have 600,000. So what is it? It's a Carmelis. Oh. And what's a beam? A beam that's 10 tefachim tall and 4 tefachim wide, what is that? That's Rishus HaYachid. So then what's the question? Could I go from a Carmelis to Rishus HaYachid? Boi Rami Bar Chama, shtei amois begag u shtei amois ba'amud. Could I take 2 amas, carry 2 amas on the rooftop, and 2 amas on a beam? Mao. Amar Rabba, Michael Mebayle, what's going on here? Carmelis or Rishus HaYachid. The rooftop is a Carmelis, and the beam is a Rishus HaYachid. Mebayle. That's a question. Of course, you can't go from a Carmelis to Rishus HaYachid. Says the Gemara, V'Rami Bar Chama agav churfei lo iyem bo. Sometimes you have a very sharp person, a very smart person. He had a really good question. In fact, the question is so strong that it's a teiku. The Gemara remains in a teiku. Just the way he said it, the way he threw it out there, it wasn't thought through. So yes, you're right. That's not a very good question. To go from a roof to a Amud is not a good question. But what he wanted to ask is the idea, the concept, this idea of walking 2 amas here and going there. The second part, we have to change a little bit. Elachika mebayle. Shtei amis begag ushtei amis b'achsadro mau. Oh. Achsadro is, let's say, a pergola. That's more than 70 amas by 70 amas in a mashu. Not only that, it's on an angle. Why is it on an angle? So we can't invoke another halacha mishmasina of pi tikra yoyer v'soisam, that the edges, the beams around the I would show you, but it's dark outside. I have it right here. You have beams, and on top of the beams you have the cross beams. These beams, the main beams that carry the load of the pergola, we view them as walls that come all the way down to the ground. Pi tikra yoyer v'soisam. But you cannot say pi tikra yoyer v'soisam when the achsadra is on an angle, as so. So if you have an achsadra on an angle, and it's a very large achsadra, you see it's wide open, a beam here, pergola. What do they call it? Whatever they call it. There's other words also. Fine. So to go from your rooftop, I don't know why you did the roof on an angle. So you go from your rooftop to your achsadra. You're only allowed, according to Rav, 4 amas. So I want to divide it. Could I cross over into another domain? Mi amrina on kivin the loy hai chazi lediro, v'loy hai chazi lediro, chada reshusahi. So let's understand, what is the question exactly? If we think about it, it's very, very problematic. Rav said that you cannot go more than 4 amas in this situation. Hold on a second. Kiven loy hai chazi lediro v'loy hai chazi lediro. So perhaps Rav was talking about in a situation. You see, right over here, you have 2 people living here, 2 doors. So what happens is, according to Rav in Rabbanan, the people that live here, because they live here, their residence extends upwards into the roof. And that's why it becomes a kamasur. But when you have somebody that lives in a house, and right next to him he has an achsadra, nobody lives here. So there's no rishus that goes upwards into the roof. So maybe it's mutter. Maybe it would be mutter to walk from the roof to the achsadra. Because the whole reason it's asur when you have multiple residents below the roof line is because we halachically we say that the residents, they go upwards into the roof. You might not see them, but whoever lives below lives above on his roof as well. And therefore it creates separate reshuyas. But that's good if there are apartments below the roof line. In the achsadra case, no apartment there, and memela, it shouldn't be a problem. Oidilma kivin dimigag legag osir. So what is the Gemara asking now? Perhaps it's not about the residence that's below, rather it's about ownership. Rashi says bailam. There's dira and there's bailam. So the Gemara is asking a very deep question. This daf today is really full of new concepts, of information, a lot of different information here. Every line is full. Malav Gadosh. We'll do whatever we can. So, Nacham, so I mean, the simple wording is one way, and then if you look in Rashi, it's a whole different question. So, Nacham, the Gemara's question is: do we view what's the problem according to Rav to walk more than 4 amas on a rooftop? Because we view the residence, not the ownership, the residence as coming upwards into the roof. That you don't have an achsadra. You don't have that on a pergola. There's no residence below a pergola, so therefore it would be mutter to carry from a rooftop to an achsadra. Or perhaps it's not about residence, it's about ownership. And since the house and the achsadra are owned by different people, different owners, so then it's usher to go, perhaps, it would be usher to carry from the roof to the achsadra. Okay, so we're continuing with this theme for now. What if I go from my rooftop onto a ruin? What's the halacha? Says the Gemara, Lav Hainu de Rami Bar Chama. Isn't that the exact same question? What's the difference? Ruin, achsadra. It's the same idea. The same. There's no residence below. Does it have to do with? So perhaps it's mutter, or no? It's a different owner. And if it's a different owner, it's aser. Omar Abibi Barabayo v'chimya acher asoy unetzoi. A new lashon that we never had. Do you think that I went somewhere else and I'm asking you questions and I'm taking from somebody else and I'm asking you? I'm asking you because I have a reason. There's something different here. We could go back to the Magid from Chicago, the Israeli guy. If you already found the question in the outskol, look for the answer in the outskol. Yeah? What are you asking? You're pretending you came up with a great chap. You saw it, you looked in the bottom, you saw great kasha, so find the answer in the bottom. Anyway, what do you think? I'm messing around. I'm just asking questions. I'm taking Rami Bar Chama's question. I'm asking you. I'm asking you because there's a reason. Why? So the Gemara, very interesting. Maybe we wouldn't think this. Like you have across America, you have in Detroit, in the south side of Chicago, you have thousands of these houses that are boarded up. Like they're not even worth $1 because the taxes cost more than what they're worth, right? They're not worth anything. People don't want them. But the Gemara says no. A churva is more ra'il adira than an achsadra. You just fix it up a little renovation, and you're good to go. So achsadra le'chazil adira, v'churva chazil adira. So on the one hand, a pergola, can't live in a pergola. It's great to read a newspaper on there, but you can't live there. So, but a churva is a dira. So then if it's a dira, then it certainly should be aser. Why is it different than two apartments? You're not allowed to walk on the rooftop of two apartments because the residence bursts through the roof. So over here also? So he says no. What's the question? So he says, he's building his question on the achsadra question as follows. So he's saying, okay, what are you going to tell me that this achsadra is not inhabitable? And therefore, on the other hand, so maybe that's why it should be mutter churva chazil dira, but on the other hand, a ruin, you could live here, so therefore it should be usher to walk or to carry from roof to roof. Right now, nobody lives in this churva. Yes, it could be, it has a possibility. You bring in a whole crew, you spend $30,000, you can fix it up. Right now, it's not habitable. So memela, it's just like an achsadra, and you should be able to carry from rooftop to rooftop. Teiku. Teiku is on both of the questions. So in fact, when we didn't understand the question all the beginning, so what's going on here? He's asking from a rooftop to a beam? No, he's asking from a rooftop to achsadra, and that's a great question that remains in a teiku. It's a big suffix. Says the Gemara. So Nachama, let's do Chazara so we're very familiar with Rav and Shmuel, because this is going to shock us. What we learned yesterday, the Gemara is going to say the exact reverse of what we learned. Again, we have a rooftop, and there's people that live underneath. According to Rav, we don't say that the center wall or the walls break up the rooftop, and therefore what we have is a very large karmelis that has different rishuyas in it, and your rishus is open to a rishus that's asur to you. And what happens when you're close to a rishus that's asur to you, you yourself become asur to carry, and memeli, you're not allowed to carry. So anytime you're not allowed to carry something, we allow you 4 amas. So you're allowed the minimum. But according to Shmuel, even where there's no hecker, you cannot see, it's a beautiful flat rooftop, they just put the tar down, everything's beautiful. Since there are walls underneath the roof, they halachically could burst through the roof. As you see in this beautiful picture, you have a good asik and an imaginary invisible wall, and that breaks up your roof. And when you have a broken up roof into different rishuyos, so each one becomes a rishus hayachid basically. And if it becomes, each part of the roof becomes a rishus hayachid, I can walk, I can carry within that rishus hayachid. Yes, I cannot go over the line, but within this limit, up until my good asik, I could carry as much as I want. And this guy will carry as much as he wants. Because they're broken up. It's as if you have a wall there, each one is in individual rishus hayachid. What does Rav say? No rishus hayachid. It's all one giant caramelis, asa to carry. Says the Gemara, Gagin hashavin l'Rebbi Meir v'gag yichidi l'Rabbana. Let's say this picture right over here. Forget the good asik for now. You have one giant rooftop. I might have a better picture here. Hold on. Let's see. Oh, you do? Much better. Here's a nice rooftop. According to a mayor, these are shava, meaning it's not like, where was that picture I had? Somewhere. Anyway, you know, we had the other day when you have the different heights in the roof. Over here, they're all the same height, beautifully flat, but many people live here, all these doors. But according to the mayor, until now we're talking about Chachamim. According to the mayor, since they're the same height, they're considered one rishus. Or, according to Chachamim, one door. Look at this giant mansion the guy lives in, one residence, but it's a giant house, giant roof. Rav Omar mutal taltal bekuloi, u'Shmuel Omar ein metaltalim boy elo bedalid. You hear Rabbi say? Hafuch al hafuch. Everything we said a second ago, the exact reverse. According to Rav, you could carry everywhere. A second ago we said Rav says you could only carry 4 amos. And now he says you carry the entire roof. U'Shmuel Omar ein metaltalim boy elo bedalid. A second ago we said Shmuel says you can carry in each roof is a rishus hayachid by itself, and you can carry the entire rishus hayachid. And now Shmuel comes along and says, no, you could only carry 4 amos. What is going on here? Says the Gemara, Hashi the Rav of the Rav. That's a contradiction to what we said a second ago. Now what? According to Rav, there's no good asik mechitzta. Look what's going on here. So, this also, Rabbi Isai, is a very interesting question. It's not as simple as I just stated the question. It's very different. What's the question? So Rashi explains as follows. Rashi explains that according to Rav, in this particular case, which is Remeir, Rav doesn't go Remeir. Rav is talking about in Chacham. But according to Rav, we don't invoke good asik. There's no good asik here. Ask the Gemara, it should be asur according to Rav to walk on this roof, to carry on this roof. Why? Because look, you see this Rishus Harabim here? Rishus Harabim all over the place. The Rishus Harabim is open to your roof. According to Rav, there's no good asik. When you don't see the walls, there's no good asik. There's no invisible walls. And if there are no invisible walls, then your rooftop is wide open to Rishus Harabim. And what happens when you're open to another Rishus that's Asr? You become Asr as well. So the rooftop should be 100% Asr to carry on. You have to see Rashi to understand that's the Gemara's question. You hear the kasha? Since it's open, it's back to back to Rishus Harabim. So some Rishonim, what bothered me is, but the rooftop is much higher. It's in a Makom P'tur. Okay, so the Rishonim discussed that in the Gemara and in Rashi. But the question is that the rooftop, which you consider, Rav considers, wide open, no mechitzas. If no mechitzas, then it's open to Rishus Harabim. If it's open to Rishus Harabim, it should be asur to carry on the rooftop. Says the Gemara, no. Hasam lo minkir mechitzta. Rav only says is halacha b'nogeya to this case right over here. When don't I say good asik mechitzta to this middle wall, let's say, when I don't see it? I don't see that there's a middle. When I'm standing on the roof, I don't see that there's apartments below me. I don't know what's going on. I don't know where the walls are inside. I don't have x-ray vision into the apartment below me. There's no indication on the roof that there's no dent or anything. There's no partial wall. So over there, Rav says, no good asik mechitzta. But look what happens over here. When you're on the roof, you see the side walls. Not the center wall, the side walls surrounding the whole house. These walls go upwards. And they create a good asik mechitzta to protect you from the Rosh Hashanah, so to speak. And now I'm allowed to carry on the rooftop because I'm not back to back with the Rosh Hashanah. I have a big mechitza called a good asik mechitzta. An invisible wall separates me between the Rosh Hashanah and myself. Ushmuel Amar ei metalton boy elo b'dalet amos. And Shmuel says you could only carry on this individual single roof 4 amos. A second ago he said, if there are many roofs, there are many residents below, I have good asik mechitzta, I make all these walls and I could carry the full size of the apartment, whatever it is. Now it's telling me you can only walk 4 amos. Why? Kasha the Shmuel. So this is straight up Kasha Shmuel, not a very interesting one like we had in Rav. All of a sudden we throw in a Rosh Hashanah, which the Gemara doesn't talk about. This is Shmuel and Shmuel. Shmuel says you can only carry 4 amos, and before he said you can carry the entire size of wherever the good asik mechitzah takes you. He says Gemara very simple. Hasam have yoysim rebeis osayim. Hacha have yoysim rebeis osayim. Very pashut. If the rooftop is enormous, like this, so now this turns into a caramelist. What about these walls? It should make it a Rosh Hashanah. Nope. As we're going to see in a second. It's here. I fell off my bed last night. And I asked myself, how is it possible I fell off my bed? I have good asik mechitzta. The size of the bed. So you don't say that, right? Because they're not. So when you have a giant yoysim rebeis osayim, you can't create a dira. It doesn't become a residential. It's enormous. It's 200 by 100. That's not residential. So you can say, oh, good, I made a mechitza, now it became residential. A mechitza cannot create residential. Just like a mechitza cannot prevent me from falling off my bed. So Memela, but Rav argues. Rav says, no, you could. You could use good asik mechitza to create a mechitza around my house. Fine. So he makes a distinction. When it's an enormous rooftop, so now I have a carmelist without any walls. There's no walls, it's one resident. I don't have any walls popping through the middle like we had before. It's different than this case where the wall starts separating my rooftop into sections. That's because I have resident A, resident B, 2 doors. But over here, forget about these doors on the bottom. I took the wrong picture. But over here, it's a giant rooftop it's a single residence, and we don't have these walls popping up. The only wall we have popping up are the side walls. But it's way too big to create a makam dira. And therefore, I am stuck in my spot. I only have 4 amas. I'm in a carmelist. Whereas yesterday's case, we had imaginary walls that broke it up into smaller sections. So this is what I did tonight, just really for Mendy Auerbach, but you guys can use it as well, and that's why I was a little late. So we have like this. We have this case right over here where the residence comes through, and there's no good asik mechitzta according to Rav. And the Gemara asked, you should be also to the Rosh Hashanah. So Rav says, well, if you don't see where the wall is, you can't tell that there's a wall, loy minkara. So therefore, this rooftop and this rooftop, the 2 blues, are open to each other. And they make it also for you to walk around. And Memela, you're limited to 4 amas according to Rav. in this case, where the Gemara asked, so you should not be able to carry from, you see the red arrow, shouldn't be able to carry at all on this rooftop. Why? Because you have the Rosh Hashanah behind here, and this Rosh Hashanah should answer this roof. Says the Gemara, no. Over here you do have mechitzas. You have mechitzas all the way around. It's minkar. These mechitzas are noticeable, and therefore they separate you from the Rosh Hashanah. And now if we're going to Shmuel, so I kind of cheated over here. Shmuel says if it's 2 saw, then it's aser. It's red, it's aser. If it's less than 2 saw, it's mutter. Okay, these pictures are not so good for Shmuel. They're really good for Rav. But I wanted to put them all in one thing. We had a question between Rav and Shmuel and Shmuel. The answer is, when there's a mechitza that you could tell that's a mechitza, it works as good asik. So therefore, the Rosh Hashanah doesn't bother me. When you cannot tell that there's a mechitza coming through, then it's a problem according to Rav. According to Shmuel, it has nothing to do with you could tell or not tell. According to Shmuel, it has to do with how big the rooftop is. If it's 2 saw, then it's a caramelis. It's way too big to do a good asik mechitza. If it's less than 2 saw, then the mechitzas go up in this case, and you do have proper mechitzas. Says the Gemara, just to finish off this sugya, and then the Gemara explains what we explained. These walls were created, where's that picture? Any picture? According to Shmuel. Why don't we have this invisible mechitza? Because the walls were created for the people that live in the apartments. They weren't created for the rooftop. And therefore, they're made for downstairs. And they're not made for upstairs. Therefore, it's a karfaf. Oh, that's a word I didn't use before. Karfaf. It's an enclosed area that for wood or whatever, like one of these yards that you store wood, but it's not for residential purposes. It's that large. It's more than 2 saw. You cannot carry more than 4 amas. But what about good asik mechitzta? Pretend that there are walls. You don't use good asik mechitzta for something that's not residential. And Rav says you could use good asik mechitzta for non-residential. Now we're going to take a short break. Itmar, svina. What about a ship? What about an aircraft carrier? Right? People use bikes to get from one side to the other. Giant ship. Rav Omar mutar l'talta bekula. Says Rav, you can carry on the entire ship. Ushmul Omar ein metatlan bo elo bedalid. You can only carry 4 amas. Rav Omar mutar l'talta bekula. Why? Because once again you have good asik mechitzta, and it's considered hukaf ladira. We are turning to Daf Amud Beis, sponsored in memory of Dr. Alan Listhaus's mother, Shendel Bat Aaron Hirsch and Bracha, and sponsored by the Austin and Tobias grandchildren, Lilu Nishmas, Zissel Baz Chaim. So Tzadik Amud Beis. At the end of the day, the ship's walls go up and they surround the whole ship, so it becomes a Rosh Hashanah, and you can carry it there. Why? Only 4 amas. Since the ship is larger than 2 saw, so we don't say that these walls are proper walls. These walls are there to make sure water doesn't come in. They're not walls for dira. So right now we understand the question, and later on we're going to see perhaps he was asking on something else. But in this case of Svina, you argue with Rav. You Shmuel say you could only carry 4 amas. Rav says you could carry an entire ship. You're on a cruise ship on Shabbos. Rav says you carry the whole thing. Shmuel says no, only 4 amas. Do we paskin like you? That's a little crazy. Hilchas HaKavasach, Hilchas HaKarav. Yeah, in fact, Allah is like Rav, you can carry an entire ship. We're going to come back to this because later on the Gemara is going to say perhaps he's asking on something else. Okay. Omer Rav Gidol, Omer Rav Chia Bar Yosef. Umoide Rav Shim Kefa Al Piha. Oh, he takes the ship and flips it over. Now, I don't know, I haven't seen really a picture of this. Maybe I have. I didn't really search. But you know, people take older airplanes, they'll take a 747, they'll make a house out of it. I'm sure they'll take a cruise ship, flip it on its, I don't know, they'll probably take it and leave it upright. But, okay, they take a ship, flip it over. Now there's two things that are happening here. Either he wants to live in it, he brought it on shore and he wants to live on it, or he's trying to fix it. So, Rav, who says you carry in a ship as much as you want, he holds that if you flip it over, you only have 4 amos. Now, why? If the pshat is he was trying to live underneath it, why only dalet amos? He wanted to live underneath. Look, beautiful, has windows. It's a building that he just turned in. It's a ship that he turned into a building. MMA law, this whole top should be one rishus. If it's owned by one guy, one rooftop, one rishus hayachid, and you have these mechitzas. Rav doesn't care if it's more than 2 saw. Even more than 2 saw, I could say, good atzig mechitzta, it's great. Says Gemara, no, he brought it in for repair. He wants to put a new layer of tar on the whole outside. So obviously he doesn't want to live in it. So he doesn't want to live in it, it's not habitable, it's not considered residence. Then the mechitzas don't go up. Rav only says that the mechitzas go up when you have a residence. So this will be very interesting. Because it will come out that, according to this, what about a beam? I have to look into it more, but Rashi discusses it. What about a beam? That's 10 tfachim, and it's 10 tfachim tall, 4 by 4. You're not living in a beam, so then why do you have walls that go all the way up? You need walls. In order to make that beam Rosh Hashanah, you have to come on to good asik that the walls on the side go up. So right now he's going to hold in a chanami. It's not considered Rosh Hashanah. A beam is not Rosh Hashanah. Nobody lives inside a beam, so it wouldn't be Rosh Hashanah. Says the Gemara, this that he asked him, Omalei, 3 lines from the top that we had. Omalei Rav Chia Bar Yosef l'Shmuel. Rav Chia asked his Rav Shmuel, did you retract or not retract? And he said, yes, I retracted. Allah is like Rav when it comes to ship. Rav Ashi Masin Lo Asvino, the question was actually asked of Shmuel, do you retract your halacha on a ship? And he said, yes, you can carry an entire ship. And Rav Acha said, no, it was not asked on a ship. The question was completely different. There was a machlokes in a second. Here we go. Ditmar achsadra bebika. You have an achsadra in the middle of nowhere. All 4 walls are not against anything. Rav says you could carry an entire thing anywhere. And Shmuel says, no. Why? Only 4 amos. These, here, this is how my pergola is built. It's a little different. Some people have these cross beams in the beam. Mine are actually on top, just like this picture. Rashi seems to say, if you look at, you see this, there's a beam over here, and then you have these guys on top. That's how Rashi says it. That it's only because you have this very large beam that comes down and you pretend you have an imaginary wall on all 4 sides. Now, notice, Stam Derech Agav, the Gemara asked a question it's the middle of a desert. It's the middle of a bika. But if it was abutted against the wall, one wall even, then there wouldn't be a shaila. Shmuel would agree, you get to carry everywhere. Then you couldn't close all 4 walls. It's because it's a middle of nowhere that Shmuel argues and says there's no Pitikr Yoyer V'Saisim on all four sides. Okay. Ushmuel Amar E Metaldim Ba'Ela Ba'Arba Lo Yamrinon Pitikr Yoyer V'Saisim. You don't say it. And on that he came and he asked Shmuel, hey, did you retract that halacha? And on that he said, yes, I retract the halacha and I paskin. I later on in my life I regretted it. The halacha is like Rav who says you could carry the entire thing. So Rav Ashi says that Shmuel regretted the halacha on a ship, and who is this? The son of Rava says he regretted this halacha of the pergola, Achsadra. Says the Gemara, this is one of the most interesting Rashis that I've seen in terms of Cheshbon, how he goes through the whole sugya. These are ginormous Rashis. I'll try to do my best. I mean, it's not necessary for the sugya, but let's see what we could do here. V'Rav aliba de Reb Meir. Rav, who says, according to Reb Meir, that what? According to Reb Meir, the rooftop, the entire thing is considered one rishus. It's considered a rishus hayachid. The whole rooftop. So if you have a rooftop that's a rishus hayachid, litaltel migag lechotzer. What's a chotzer? A rishus hayachid. We actually learned the other day, and we're going to learn it in a few minutes. Reb Meir holds that all rooftops are rishus. All chatzeres are rishus. And all karfafs are rishus. But you cannot go from a chotzer to a gag, and from a gag to a karfaf. You go from many gagois. You go many chatzeros. But not one, you can't mix the categories. Why not? If a gag is a rishus hayachid, 100% the rishus hayachid, and a chotzer is 100% rishus hayachid, why can't they go from my rooftop to my chotzer? What's the problem? Says the Gemara, Gzeira mishum de Rav Yitzchok bar Avdimi. Only because, you're right, you should be able to. But because typically the roof is higher up than a chotzer, so that's the halach that we learned the other day, that there's a concern you might carry in Rishus HaRabim, you might take something and put on Rishus HaRabim on top of a beam. Because if I allow you to step it up, to go up 10 tefachim, you might do so in Rishus HaRabim. It's a gzeira, nothing to do with anything else. Now, why didn't the Gemara ask this question, Shmuel and Reb Meir? And why didn't the Gemara ask this question, Rav, on Rabbanan? And that's what Rashi goes through beautifully. I encourage you to look at Rashi, but I just did a really short one over here. So Rashi just says, Rav, the Gemara's question is, Rav in Reb Meir, that the rooftop is considered one, why can't they go from a gag to a rishus hayachid, a gag to a chotzer? I wrote rishus hayachid. Okay, sorry. Matzah Shabbos and a rush. Gag to a chotzer, which is a rishus hayachid. Why not ask the question according to Rabbanan? Because, in fact, you are allowed to go from a gag to a chotzer, as we're going to see in a minute. So there's no question. The only question is, according to Reb Meir, says you cannot go from a roof to a chotzer. Why not? They're both rishus hayachid. But according to Rabbanan, you could go. No question. Great. Now, why is this only a question according to Rav in Reb Meir? What about Shmuel? Shmuel and Reb Meir holds that the rooftop is a carmelis. Oh, so then you cannot go from a carmelis to your chotzer. It's a rishus hayachid. You can't go from a carmelis. Okay, fine. And as we explained, that good asik doesn't create a makom dira. It doesn't make your carmelis roof a dira. Okay, next question. And this is the last one. Ushmuel aliba de Rabbanon. Shmuel, who holds in a singular roof that's more than two saw, nitaltel migag de karfaf. Shouldn't they be the same category? A giant roof that's more than two saw, that's like a karfaf, that's more than two saw. So why do Rabbanan hold that you cannot go from a karfaf to a roof? from a roof to a karfaf. They're in the same category. Nitaltel migag the karfaf. Shouldn't you be allowed to carry from the same categories? In the same category, the different names. One is a gag, one is a karfaf, but it's the same category. They do the same thing. They're both giant, open spaces that are not meant to live in. Why can't they carry from one to the other? I could carry from one karfaf to another karfaf, from one gag to another gag. In fact, Chacham say you could go from a gag to chatzar, as we're going to see soon. But why not from a gag to a karfaf, if they're the same category? Amar Rava bar Ula, Gzeira Shema Yipaches Hagag. Very interesting. We are concerned, and here's a little bit of a picture, as much as you could get. But if you look over here, you'll see that there are a bunch of bricks in a pile. In other words, this, based on the picture before in Kol HaLashon, this rooftop came all the way out. And now it was reduced in size. Now, what happened is that this entire rooftop is less than 2 saw. Less than 2 saw creates Rosh Hashanah. And then it would be usher to go from the karfaf. You see this nice karfaf, all the wood. Now it's a different category. The whole question is when it's more than 2 saw, then it's in the same category as a karfaf. But if it's reduced and I'm not paying attention that somebody reduced it, I might carry from here to there. Says the Gemara, it doesn't make sense. So anytime you have back-to-back karfefos, maybe one of them is going to be reduced in size. And then you're going from a karfef that's more than 2 saw to a karfef that's less than 2 saw. Also, one is Rosh Hashanah, one is not. Says the Gemara, says the Gemara, milsa. Over here, when you have a karfaf to a karfaf that are surrounded, you see a karfaf has walls around it. So when you reduce it, it's noticeable. You'll see that it got smaller. But it's in open spaces, it's very hard to tell how large an open space is. And when you reduce an open space area without any walls, very hard to tell that something happened. Fine. Again, if somebody has time, you should go through these Rashis. Rashi de Ramaskul Taltel Gag L'Chotzer. Rashi de Ramaskul Shmuel Alib de Rabbanon is a good one. And then we have over here in Daf Tzadik Aleph, it's a very short sugya, 3 lines, but the Rashi goes all the way down to where it is wide. Also amazing stuff. Says the Gemara, and we had this Gemara, that's why we learned it, even though Rashi is an amazing Rashi here. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Kishatim Tzaloymar, when you really look into this and you start thinking about it, the Divrei Rabbi Meir, so we have, like any other time, we have a 3-way machlokes. So let's just talk it out about Peh. We have the Shita of Reb Shimon. He's the most makel. He says you could go from a gag to a karfaf, from a karfaf to a gag. Where is that? You could jump from here to there to there. We'll see story, Maisis, Shahaya. They're all the same category. Gag, karfaf, chotzer, all the same. And Memela, I could go from one to the other through the whole city, not even owned by one person. He's the most makel. Then you have Rabbi Meir. He divides them up. He says, no, they're all separate. Karfefos are by themselves. A chotzer is by itself. A gag is by itself. So he's on the other side. And then you have Rabbanan, they're in the middle. They say some of it is the same category, some not. Chotzer and gag are in the same category, but karfaf is by itself. So as Rabbi Yehuda, Kishtim Saloymar, L'divrei Rabbi Meir, gag in Rishus La'atzman, Chatzer is Rishus La'atzman. Karpifia is Rishus La'atzman. So Rashi here says a very interesting thing. He says that you could go from a chotzer that's owned by an individual to a chotzer that's owned by an individual. And then he says, you can go from a chotzer that's owned by the rabbin to a chotzer that's owned by the rabbin. Mashma, you cannot go from a chotzer of an individual to a chotzer of an individual. Fivish, I haven't seen you in months. Shalom Aleichem, how are you, Tzaddik? And also Reb Shimshon Feder, I haven't seen you either. Maybe it's the America thing, huh? Okay. A lot of new people. Not new people, Chas v'Shalom, Moshe Pashkas. What's going on here? All the tzaddikim, I thought you guys left me. Tomer Levi! It's time to get up and make a rikud now. Shalom Aleichem Tzadikim, Abe Newman. So what? It's only because I was in America? You left me? That's it? Back there? Okay, I got it. Shkoyach. It's the night cheer. Thank you. Wow. It's great to see everybody. There's a bunch of other people here also. Okay, good. Gagin Rishus La'atzmon, Chatzer Rishus La'atzmon, Karfiviyos Rishus La'atzmon. Maybe we'll do a little bit more of this tomorrow. L'divrei Chachamim, Gagin v'Chatzeros Rishus Achas. What does that mean? Chachamim divided up. If we just discussed this a lot. The Gagim are separate. They're different. You can't go from Gag to Gag in Rav. But it means you could go from a Gag to a Chatzer. Your own Gag, your own roof, to your own Chatzer. Karpiviyos Rishus Achasein. And all the Karfafs are by themselves. L'divrei Rebbe Shimon, Kulon Rishus Achasein. Ayin and Rashi, if you want to see a beautiful Rashi, how Rav Yehuda understood this, how he realized that this is, what does it mean? Kishatim Salaymar, when you look deep in, what is the deep? Rashi brings you through the depth. How he was medayik from this and got this and all the beautiful stuff. Rabbi Isai, have a wonderful evening, have a wonderful week. A good Voch. Oh, that's right, Leon, the whole Shabbos is Leon. You're in trouble because I spoke to you on Thursday. You didn't mention a thing to me. Garnished. It was a side. Where is he? Where's Leon? Here's Leon. Mazel tov, Leon. Mazel tov. Chasen Eretz Yisrael, I hope, yeah? All right. Why is everybody not unmuted? Could I unmute people? They're unmuting. Okay, good. He's a big night guy, Moshe Pashkas. He came a few times to MDY at night. But come on, what? You couldn't visit me once?
You were in America. We watched you on YouTube. We thought we had the shoes when you were out of town to go to YouTube.
Shalom Aleichem Moshe Zera. Where are you? You're here? You're in Ramat Bet Shemesh?
Yes, I'm on Ayalon.
Ayalon, wow. Very nice.
I'm here 8 weeks now.
Psh. Welcome.
Thank you.
Rabbi Bodenheim, what's going on? I hear you're getting a guest soon in Gimel. It's not like, I don't know if it's official. I don't know. I heard he's telling people about it. So whatever. We won't talk about it. Barabim. What? Hi Akiva. Did you get your lechi back? Your lechi and kaira? Did you get your mavui back? I sent the mavui back home to you. It wasn't in the best condition, but it's not bad. Oh, the Schreibers. Oh my gosh. I forgot about these people. Hashem Yirachim. Joe, you couldn't visit me in a month. I don't know what's going on there. I was having Chalishas Hadas. I was thinking about all these people that left. I said Five-ish and Joe and oy.
It's good to see you and good to be seen.
Yeah. It was one of those Motzei Shabbosim, even though I had an hour and a half, still didn't even have time to put on my tie. But I was used to America, because in America we didn't do the tie thing because it was Sunday morning. What?
Just leave it on.
No, it wasn't on the whole Shabbos. I didn't wear it the whole Shabbos. Let me shut off YouTube. Hold on.
You don't want YouTube to hear the politics about ties?